Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of Dragonlance. In this show, my co-host and I delve into the novels and stories of the incredibly famous and lengthy fantasy series Dragonlance. We're going to go book by book and delve into the secrets that made this series so groundbreaking and legendary. Hello companions and welcome back. Last time we left the party in the company of the Forestmaster, who had just told them that they had to be across the world in 2 days. Let's take up where we left off with Chapter 12 of Dragons of Autumn Twilight. The chapter subheading, of course, because like these books in the 80s, they all had subheadings. Chapter 12, Winged Sleep, Smoke in the East, Dark Memories. So this is a pretty big chapter because this is where finally the story is starting to move somewhere and we're starting to actually leave Abyssinia, well, not Abyssinia, but leave the soulless regions and go to explore the first real dungeon that these guys are going to be crawling in, Xak Tsorath. So, at the beginning of this chapter here, Tanis is sitting there. They've been going through and trying to talk to the Forestmaster, figure out where they're going. Tanis has his conversation with Raceland and says, you know what? Okay, fine. We're going to go to Xak Tsorath. And Sturm is like, oh, really? Is that what the mage is telling you to do? And Tanis said, it is. But he knows what he's talking about. So we're going to do what he says because you guys don't have any good ideas either. It's true, to be fair, like they're currently floundering. They don't really have a good idea where to go. Having anybody give you a direction is sometimes what you need to do in order to actually get your butt moving. And especially like in D&D adventures, right? Sometimes somebody just needs to give you a prompt and point you in a direction.
And Tanis offers Sturm a way out. He says, like, look, if you have something better to do, go do it. And then Sturm rejects it. He has this quote. He's like, there's nothing in the north for me. I've been deluding myself. The knights of my order are scattered, holed up in crumbling fortresses, fighting off the debt collectors. So
a lot of storytelling right there in that one little sentence. Because basically what we got here is Sturm, who we know is a Salamnik, right? He's living here in Abyssinia. He's an immigrant diaspora kid. We know that when they split up 5 years, he went north to go discover the roots of his family. And what does he find out? That the knights are all just scattered to the wind, that they've been unable to keep up their fortresses and their lands, and that they're currently impoverished trying to fight off debt collectors. That is a lot of story we're getting right there. That is already setting up the fact that Salamnia, one of the biggest countries in the continent, one of the most important powers in the world, is basically fallen to ruin. And Tanis sits there and is like, you know what? He's looking at his friend, his young 30-year-old friend who's been out there living his life trying to do this thing. Tanis is like 200, and he's just like, he's feeling tired because he's looking at his friend who's sad and in agony, and suddenly, his legs are aching, his body is aching, and he's just like, this sucks. He's feeling every ounce of his age right now.
It's a Murtaugh moment.
Yeah, he's just like, man, I cannot help you, and I can't help us, but we got to go do something.
There's this little side comment as Sturm and Tanis are having this serious discussion where Tasselhoff wonders what the greatest gift is, and he's thinking like it's jewels. And I like Flint's comment here. He says it's beer, Otox, potatoes, and a warm fire. And
if only.
I find myself agreeing more with Flint as I get older. The greatest gift sometimes just sounds like being able to sleep in bed all day.
Yeah, like, you know what I would give for a comfortable chair that I could just like collapse into right now? Like, let's be real for a second. Flint is an old dwarf and I get it now. I didn't get it as a kid, but I get it now.
Yeah, exactly.
So they all decide they need to leave now. The Forestmaster is basically right there, and Raceland's like, okay, you know what? We got to leave. So he goes up to the Forestmaster and is like, is there anything you could do to help us? You said something. And the Forestmaster is like, yeah, I think I can help you out. She looks up to the sky, and out of nowhere, in the night sky, coming through the canopy of the tall trees, there's something flying up there. And Flint is like, flying horses? What in blazes? And suddenly the pegasuses show up. This is like an awesome fantasy moment. You're in a forested glade with a unicorn, and suddenly she summons a bunch of flying pegasi that are going to take you all the way across the Eastwall Mountains. That is a super, very, like when I was 12, that was a rad scene to think about.
When I first started reading it, I thought they might be giant eagles, and then I thought this might be like an homage to
Tolkien,
The Hobbit, right?
Yeah, it is. It's 100%. It 100% is.
It's the same thing where they're basically being carried to where they need to by magical creatures. Except instead of it being giant birds, it's
yeah. Or like any of those like Golden Axe type games that came out in the 90s or something, and you're like, I need to get from this level to the next one. Okay, we're gonna get on the back of giant birds that'll fly us there. Because if you look at the map, Xak Tsorath is nowhere near where the forest that they're in is. So having to make that shortcut requires a DM trick. And that trick is, hey, look, flying horses, let's go.
Oh, that made me think, and I wonder, because you say that this whole thing was originally played out. When Sturm threatens to leave, right? I wonder if there was at one point, the DM's greatest terror is when the party wants to split itself, right?
I mean, you would think so, but it's like I've been talking to Margaret, and essentially they had the plot of the story more or less already made up when they were running the module. And it was less that they ran the module and then wrote it up, and more that they were also writing the game product as well as the novel. When the gamers would do something cool and different that was like, oh, that's a neat trick, they would add that into the book. So the plot beats were kind of already sculpted out there, but sometimes things from the game would creep in as just like, hey, that was a really neat way to solve this problem, and it's cooler than the idea I had, so this is now in the book. For instance, Raceland talking in a whisper all the time was because that's the way the player who was playing him did it. And like Raceland having golden hourglass eyes is because the artist thought it would be really cool. And then later on, they had to figure out what that actually meant. But yeah, so the Pegasi come down, they dip their wings. The Forestmaster basically says, all right, take these people across to Xak Tsorath. And the Pegasus, of course, being, a sentient being, is like, are you kidding me? You want me to give a ride to a bunch of humans and a dwarf and a kender? Really?
I guess they were okay with the elf. They were okay with the half elf, but that's about it.
They have, Pegasus and elves have lengthy relationships. One thing you don't know, because this is book 1 and it has not come up yet, but in the Elven Nations trilogy, which is the trilogy about the founding of Sylvanesti and Qualinesti, and like one of my favorite trilogies in the entire saga, Kithganon, the guy who was the founder of Qualinest, rode upon a griffin, but he also had Pegasus riders. And you would see the large affinity for the elves and these animals, because their god, Astarin, was basically the bard god, but also the god of nature and natural animals and things. So there's like elven affinity with, and also it's fantasy, elves and Pegasus. Come on.
It's just, that's elf stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's elfy things. They're fine. And of course, Flint is like, don't do me any favors, buddy. We're not friends.
Goldmoon and Riverwind, they mount the Pegasus stallion, and then they begin to sing. And I was wondering if they had a subclass as a bard.
Yeah. No, they've got a subclass of Tracy Hickman likes to write songs.
Yeah. They're all caught up in the music and the imagery.
And in the fact that they're flying.
Yeah, and there's some real pretty language by Margaret and Tracy here about the silver and red moons casting everything in purple light. The Forestmaster looking like a fallen star lost in the darkness of the forest.
I love it. It's so good.
It's real good writing.
Yeah, they do such a good job of like scenery writing. The world that they build, the pictures that they paint are so lovely to just visualize in your skull.
I've read this book multiple times, I think, and I never, until reading it this time, it's like, oh, a silver and a red moon, like that would be purple light, right? Like that would be,
yeah,
there would be a weird purple hue, and that would be pretty.
And here's the thing, like one thing you don't think about, like Corinne's got 3 moons, right? Black, the red, and the silver. And it's not just that the silver moon is out all the time. The red moon is also out a lot. So think about the fact that at nighttime, these guys are just walking around and everything is just looking like it's under halogen traffic lights, right? Like the big bright orange lights all the time. If the silver moon's not up and it's just red, everything is either dark reddish or orange reddish. And if the silver moon's up, everything's kind of like purpley magenta. The world must look so weird at night.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're just living a life where there's 3 moons, you're just used to everything is purple. It's just cool. Whatevs. And once in a while, the red moon's not up and it's just the silver and the black. And you're like, wow, everything's really white outside. That's so weird.
There's another DM trick here where, so there's no trouble on this flight and we don't have to experience it. The Pegasus put the party under a sleeping spell, and Tasselhoff lasts the longest. And he's basically at the end, he's told mortals aren't meant to fly, so go to sleep. And so we can get you to the next plot beat.
Well, it's like Tracy Hickman writes in the Annotated Chronicles that I have a terrible fear of heights, and yet I was a glider pilot when I was 17. My mind deals with the difference between standing atop a 100-foot cliff and soaring at 10,000 feet in the same way. So he was like looking at this and seeing how the world is mapped out before him. And this is one of those scenes where they really show Tasselhoff and the Kender as a child with a childlike curiosity, because he's like looking overboard and looking down at the world, and he's like, oh my god, I gotta map this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I need to like take notes. I'm never going to see this sort of thing again. He's just like a kid who is fighting bedtime.
Oh, that's a good point.
And like, he's like, no, I'm going to stay awake. I'm going to stay awake. And the Pegasus is like, sleep now, little baby. Now. And he's like, no, I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
And it's got to be a magic spell, because I don't know how else they would have stayed on the back of these
It's
stallions.
100%. They cast sleep, like mass sleep on these people and just pieced them out. And that's like, just like, look, when you're like, okay, well, I need to get you from here to here, and between there is nothing and it's boring. Woodley, 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 you guys wake up and you're there. You know, like the screen goes kind of like fuzzy. We go to commercial break, we wake up, and
Except
the
they're
half-elf
not
wakes with a
there.
start.
Except they're not there.
They're close, though. They're close. Kind of. Well, maybe not.
Tanis wakes up in a field, and the stallion's right there, and he noticed that they're not even over the east wall. And the stallion says he couldn't take them any further because darkness fills the air. Great trouble brewing in the east, and I dare not travel further. And then they leave.
Yeah, and they're like, GG, bye.
And we get more hints. The darkness fills the air is a big hint, actually, because we're going to...
Yeah, like...
a couple chapters, we're going to see that darkness.
What could possibly fill the air such that these holy Pegasuses don't want to keep going? And like the Pegasus itself says, you know, I know not what awakened this great evil on Kryn. I trust it was not you and your companions. So bye. And Tan's like, wait, what? Whoa, no, hang on, whoa. But homie's gone.
And he's like, they don't even know where they are.
No, they're just like sleeping. Literally, the party is still catatonic under the spell. They're sleeping on the ground somewhere. Tanis wakes up. He's looking around and he's like, well, I'm in a prairie somewhere. The sun is coming up. There's not a tree in sight and nothing but rolling fields of tall grass as far as I could see. And so he's like, I need to look at the sun and figure out where I am and how to get anywhere. Tracy and Margaret were like, no, we definitely need to make sure the sun rises in the same place because we don't want to give the people, they only have to deal with 3 moons. Let's not change where the sun is.
Dawn comes, plain. They think he's in the plainsman's lands. On the distance, he can see 3 columns of smoke.
Yeah.
Tanis goes to wakes Riverwind, and Riverwind looks around and he tells him, oh, I know where we are. We're about half a day from the Eastwall Mountains, and then from the Eastwall Mountains to Xak Tsorath is about another day, right? Is that right?
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
They're cutting it close on that 2-day deadline.
Oh yeah, they're definitely like, they've got a long hike to go. However, they've got a problem though, because Riverwind is like, oh yeah, you know, half a day's journey from the Eastwall Mountains. My village lies to the east, and he stops and he's pointing silently eastward. Well, he stops because Tanis suddenly points, and Riverwind turns to look, and he's like, oh no. And basically he screams out there. Goldmoon jerks awake, looks around, and they immediately know what they're seeing because 3 burning columns coming from the east in the direction that is their village.
Yeah.
So we have a problem now. Basically, 2 days ago, these 2 teleported out of there running away with the blue crystal staff, or 3 days ago, whatever it is. Well, let's say about a week now. About a week ago. And now their village is on fire. So they wake up the rest of the companions. They start looking around and they have a problem though, because Carmon wakes up and is like, what's going on? Tan's like, oh, their village is burning. Apparently the armies are moving faster than we thought. And Raceland's like, remember the Draconian clerics mentioned that they had traced a staff to a village in the plains.
Yeah.
And suddenly Goldmoon and Riverwind are in stun lock because, whoops, we led death to our home. Oh, we're screwed.
There's some discussion about, do we go to the village? But we have, you know, this deadline, and Riverwind says we have to go to the village because the way to where we need to go goes through the village. So we might as well just check it out.
Get it over with and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So they start hiking and they go through and make it by twilight to the village of Quayshu. It is a horror.
Oh, well, no, they skip it.
Oh, actually, yeah.
They do this interesting thing where we jump to nighttime in the storytelling, and it's Tanis is recollecting the horrors that they saw when they walked through it.
Yeah, actually, because Tracy Hickman has a note here, which is there's nothing so horrible as that which is left to our imagination. As I've said, writers are evokers conjuring images in the reader's mind. Each reader has, interestingly enough, a unique experience when he or she reads. And no description of detail will affect you as much as your own imagination will. And they do this a couple of times in the series where they basically cut and then like skip forward, because part of it is also they wanted to keep this book age appropriate. They wanted to keep it like, you know, preteen, teenish, 13-year-old-ish, but they also wanted to not have to write scenes that would be disturbing to them, right? Like these are things that are important to see. These are things that are important to do, but they're also like, we don't need to describe in gory detail what just happened. You know what happened. You could fill it in, but we will.
It doesn't need to be grimdark.
Yeah, but we will give you the outline, and you can fill in the framework yourself, right?
Yeah.
Basically, like Tanis is sitting there in this paragraph break. It's twilight. The companions are huddled around a fire that gives no warmth because there existed no flame on Kryn that would drive the chill from their souls. What a moment. Wow. And Tanis has lived through much of what was horrible in his life, but the ravaged town of Quayshu would always stand out in his mind as a symbol of the horrors of war. What did they see? What do you even need to know? If something so shocking that a guy who's been around the world and lived for over 200 years is basically chilled to his bones.
The stones were melted. They were smoldering. He doesn't even know what could do that. And then this obsession around this sound, right? They could only hear one sound in the entire ruined village. It was a creaking sound, and end up obsessing the party a bit where they had to find out what was making this noise. And, it would have been better off if they didn't find it, because in the center of the town, there's posts driven to the ground and there's melted chains, and strung between them are hobgoblin corpses and battered shields with a crude notice on it. It says, "This is what happens to those who take prisoners against my command. Kill or be killed. Verminard."
Oof.
So the only bodies that they even find, or I mean, I guess they don't ever mention the other bodies, but
Well, they mentioned blackened and twisted bodies, right?
yeah.
They've been obliterated by something so hot that nothing is left of this town. These gibbets or whatever are just like horrifying. There's like melted chains hanging from it, and these corpses are just like toasted. And this is the first time we hear the name Verminard. Here is our big baddie for the first section of the book, who is, according to his own novel much later, one of the descendants of Huma, the last descendant of Huma, but that's like so borderline canonical, it doesn't even matter. But Verminard's a cool, twisted dude. We will get to know him better. But of course, Goldmoon standing in front of her father's ruined house, trying to put back together a broken vase in shock. A dog curled around the body of a dead child. What an image. Ah.
Oh, and that's the only living thing is they found is that dog around the dead child. And
yeah.
There's Sturm is praying. Goldmoon and Riverwind are running around screaming names, looking for anyone. And of course, it's Raistlin who says, "We can't stay here, guys. We have to go. There's a deadline. It's important." And, everyone gives him dirty look, but he's right. Why would you want to stay in that town anyway, right? Like,
there's nothing here. Everybody is dead. It is going to send Goldmoon and Riverwind into shock. This is like going to, it's war. You were going to a town that has been obliterated, wiped off the face of the planet. You're the last two survivors. Yes, there's something to be said for mourning. There's something to be said for being able to sit and absorb and do this, but you have a time limit. Whatever did this is going to keep doing this, and you have it in you to be able to stop it. You need to go, right? They traveled far into the night, none of them wanting to stop, each wanting to push his body to the point of exhaustion so that when they finally slept, there would be no evil dreams. But the dreams came anyway.
Yeah, it's such a good ending. And, I've never had my village destroyed, but I've certainly been in places in my life where the only solution to like dealing with my emotions was to just exhaust myself.
You got to get out. You got to get out.
There are certainly times where I have just run, I've gotten up at night, and I've just put my running clothes on, and I've run like 8, 9, 10 miles in the middle of the night just to be exhausted so I could come home and finally sleep. So I don't know what it's like to have my village destroyed, but I certainly know what it's like when you have so many emotions that there's no way of dealing with them. And so the only solution is to just exhaust yourself.
Exactly.
So you can turn your brain off.
That's why sometimes you see people who are really just, sad like this, turn to work out, to go to the gym and just beat the crap out of themselves until they're just exhausted. Or like go to the backyard and just like split wood or whatever it is, some physical activity that will exhaust your body so that your mind can turn off and rest. Because otherwise you're just going to be plagued by this kind of sadness and this persistence of just like nightmares, right? Like, that like there's nothing good. That Riverwind and Goldmoon have already been having nightmares. Riverwind's already had nightmares. And he's going to go to sleep and he's going to wake up and be like, I brought this on my family and people. And they have to keep moving. They have to keep their bodies going so that they don't give these people the chance to sink into a stupor. And so here we go at the end of chapter 12, moving into chapter 13, Chill Dawn, Vine Bridges, Dark Water.
As it said at the last, but the dreams came anyway. And yeah, this chapter starts with Tanis being awoken by Riverwind because he's screaming in his sleep. And then it just notes it like he's not the only member of the party who slept poorly, right? They all slept poorly.
Yeah.
Tanis offers Riverwind to he says, I'll watch, you can sleep. And Riverwind says, I'm not getting any sleep tonight. So he tries to convince him it doesn't work. There's a discussion where they have about a day to reach Xak Tsorath, and they're trying to figure out how far away it is. And Riverwind's talking about things, and it starts to dawn on us because there's been hints at this before, hints in the book, where Riverwind doesn't seem to know whether he's been to this place before or not. And he doesn't know where it is, but he does know where it is. And if you remember when earlier in the book, he mentions being in a black city and he can't remember. And so we're starting to see subtle hints that this is that place that has been mentioned previously in Riverwind's backstory, I think.
Yeah, because Flint and Tanis, Flint is off there. He's just carving a piece of carving a piece of wood. And because he does that a lot, Flint being a, traveling craftsman and whatever. And he's sitting there talking to Tanis, and Tanis goes to Flint and says, hey, do you know where we are? And Flint says, the plainsman says that we're on a road known as Sageway East, some old highway. It's been around since before the Cataclysm. Now, the weird thing here is we know from even the intro that Flint is a traveling peddler and a crafter and a guy who sells stuff all up and down. Like he sells things to the elves and to the dwarves and the humans, and he travels quite a bit. You would think that he would know where they are because he's been doing this for hundreds of years. I mean, the companions used to travel with him. That's what their whole backstory was. It's like that's how they learned how to adventure. They traveled all over the place with Flint. But the authors can be forgiven for not remembering the backstory of the character they created because this is, they're writing this as they go.
Oh, I also thought that this is all pretty rich ruins, right? Like, why would you know the name of a road that goes to a place where no one goes to?
I guess that is true. Like Xak Tsorath is not exactly a hopping town. It's a city that was destroyed at the moment of the Cataclysm. So they would probably just know vaguely, oh, it's there, more so than, hey, let's get on the random old highway that goes specifically to this one town that nobody has lived in for hundreds of years.
And, spoilers, we're going to get there real soon, but I can see why no one knows where it is. Like, we end up going there and there doesn't have much to lend it. So I can see why no one...
why wouldn't people know exactly where the swamp is?
Yeah,
right? But yeah, so Tanis like, so I don't suppose this one takes us Xak Tsorath, and Flint's like, probably, but Riverwind doesn't seem to think so. He says he's only followed it a short distance, but it gets us through the mountains, and really, these days, that's kind of all you need is to be able to get through those mountains. So Tanis not having a good time right now.
They go to sleep. Tanis wakes up. He asks Hasselhoff for a map. There's more discussion of it. This is what I thought was surprising, is that Hasselhoff has a map, and it's pre-Cataclysm. And I was like, wait, see, he has a map that's 300 years old and it's just sitting in a pouch. And I was wondering, or is this just a drawing of a map that is pre-Cataclysm, right?
Right. I mean, well, the thing is, it could be both, right? It is a Kender. First off, Hasselhoff is a map maker. That's his gig.
Yeah.
He's a map collector and a map maker. And this also kind of lends itself to the stereotype of Kenders being like map hoarders. But Hasselhoff is like every Kender. So let's take 10 seconds and just kind of go into Kender for a second. Kender have this thing called wanderlust. When they hit puberty, they're basically pick up and leave. And they're urged to travel up and down wherever they can and just explore the world and then eventually go home and get married, maybe, whatever. But for the most time, they go on wanderlust and never come back. And because of that, most Kender end up collecting a ton of maps and stuff for just random places. Hasselhoff, of course, is looking through the sheaf of maps here, basically rolled together like parchments and leather scrolls and birch bark and whatever random crap maps are made on, tissue papers and t-shirts. And he pulls it up, and chances are the map he has was either an original or he borrowed it from a buddy and copied it. It could very well be any of these things. He could have stolen it from a museum.
But
I could see
pre-Cataclysm, how many years ago is that? That's like 1,000, 2,000?
No, it's about 350 years ago. 360 years ago, give or take.
Still be impressive to a piece of paper. Oh, probably not paper for 350 years old to open and close.
Yeah, probably not. It's probably like leather or a scroll or parchment, but it's probably a copy of a copy of a copy of a bootleg, right? But yeah, so the Kender did have a map. It wasn't much help dating as it did before the Cataclysm. Newsea wasn't on the map since it appeared after the land had been torn apart and the waters of the turbidous ocean had rushed in to fill it. Still, the map showed Xak Tsorath as only a short distance from the highway marked Sageway East. They should reach it sometime that afternoon if the territory they had to cross wasn't impassable.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy, is those some last words right there. First off, if you've got a map that exists before the world was rent asunder, maybe you don't want to trust it too much, i.e. not having the ocean that is right there on it.
Yeah. It's not an ocean, it's a sea.
Yeah, it's kind of like looking at a map of Pangea and saying, "Oh, I can get from Brazil to Africa, no problem. It'll be just a couple of hop steps and we go." And it's like, "Oh, bro."
I wanted to ask, mentions that Raceland is drinking his, in quotes, nasty tea. And has Margaret or Tracy ever described what this tea is?
Yeah. So basically what he's got is he's got this medicinal tea that he has to drink, and it's like it helps with his cough. It's effectively homebrewed Robitussin.
Oh,
It's like a bunch of herbs, that roots and things that he has to grind up into this like awful herbal like concoction that he has to drink in order to make his throat feel better. But because that was part of the curse that he got from going through the test, is it blew his body up. So he's always coughing up blood and got like really weak lungs and everything.
got it.
And that means he has to drink this nasty tea all the time. And it's not necessarily that Margaret and Tracy don't know what tea is. It's just they understand that sometimes when you're drinking from an apothecary of hippies, you're going to be drinking like random bark and crap, and it's not going to taste great. It's like my grandma's medicine. Let's be real. Like drinking turmeric tea, it's like, oh.
Oof.
It's funny. It's so weird to see like today people will go to Starbucks and be like, "Oh, I want a turmeric latte," without realizing that it's a punishment that you have to drink at home in Indian households. It's like, oh yeah, take some milk and pour in turmeric, salt, and like honey and drink it down really hot. And I'm like, that's so gross, Mom. Why do I have to do it? It's like, because it'll make you feel better. It does, because you don't want everyone to drink it again, so you make your body better.
Yeah, that was my mom's way of getting us not sick, was to make us so miserable while we were sick that we definitely wanted to not be sick so we could go back to school or whatever it was, so we weren't at home anymore.
So yeah, Raceland's tea is just a bunch of leaves and roots and herbal remedies mixed together, and
Got it. Okay.
it probably tastes fine, but it's probably not as good as it could be. He's obviously not like an apothecary. So Raceland has to drink those teas. It's interesting though, because like in the first draft of Autumn Twilight, one day has already passed between where they've gone to and getting to Xak Tsorath. They've got 2 days to get there. But in the first draft, there's this whole section where Raceland is basically sitting and urging them to keep going on and on, stopping, Goldmoon from performing the rituals for her father's burial, stopping, finding the road through the mountain, stopping them from like getting like off track and everything. And Tanis is like, I wonder if it's cool-headed or cold-blooded. And I'm like, oh man, I wish they'd kept that line in the book, because that's true. It's like, is he just being callous, or is he like trying to get them to move or both, right?
I could see why they cut it, because he's already a big enough ass. They didn't have to make him seem more of an ass.
I think it was like a step too far into just Raceland being a douchebag, but it's like, he is not a loving, kind person.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he has to drink his tea.
There's this talk about the staff and what it has now cost Goldmoon and Riverwind, and Raceland's asking, like, is it worth it, right? And well, if it's really the gods have returned, right, isn't anything worth it? And that's a pretty deep theological discussion, right? Like,
yeah,
when you think like, okay, like if the gods exist, why do they cause pain, right? Like why are they doing this to us?
Think about this quandary that Tracy has put us in right now, right? Tracy and Margaret, think about this. Goldmoon has a staff that can bring the dead back to life, that can heal people, that can use its charges to protect and save. It is a symbol of the goddess of healing. And yet she has had to sacrifice her entire people for this staff, right?
Yeah.
Like, it has been bought in the blood of her father and her kinfolk and her family and her entire race. And you're like, if Mishakal, the goddess of healing, who is literally, able to bring the dead back and has this as her symbol, why is she forcing her chosen one, her chosen priestess, who is the one to bring the word back to the people, to suffer like this? Why wouldn't you be like, hey, look, as a sign of my return and my miracle, and as like an upfront payment towards our for future bargains, I'm going to bring your people back to life and heal them and stuff. But theologically, no, the book does not give you that out. The book says, look, Goldmoon, your job is to bring this word back to the people. Your job is to bring the gods back to the people who have forgotten them at any cost, right? Even if the cost is yourself, your sacrifice to free them from the evil that is now plaguing the world is like, that's the price we pay in order to bring this goodness back, right? Like,
well, and it's wild because that conversation hasn't happened. It's not as if she has met the goddess and said, I will be your priestess. And the goddess says, it's going to cost you all this. She doesn't know.
Oh, yeah, she had no idea. She's just been, and it wasn't even her staff.
Yeah.
Riverwind brought it back and like just kind of gave it to her. And she's like now stuck with this thing.
It's like, we never agreed to. And it's one of the things I always remember. And it's true of like these gods. And I always remember with like Greek and Roman gods is that like the Greek and Roman gods they're not human. They do not care for you like humans.
No.
They do not like, and it is a mistake to think about them as humans, right? You are not dealing with them. And Judaism has some of this too when they talk about God, is that God is not a human. And you make a mistake in thinking that God thinks like a
Yes.
And Christianity has lost all of that, right? Christianity it's my heavenly father. It's my dad in space.
They've given they incarnated the Lord into humanity as this bodily human that can deal with, because it's way more relatable than like for instance, in Hinduism, the reason our gods have different skin tones and multiple arms and heads and stuff is to represent the fact that they are not us.
Yeah.
They live in reality and are doing things in every time, shape, and space that they can think of. And we only live in this one, and we can only like manifest and visibly understand them in this one segment. And I think the line here is very similar. Like Tracy is basically like, look, the gods have a plan. You are the tool being used. Your feelings do not particularly matter right now.
Yeah.
You can have that discussion later. She'll listen to you. But right now, you've got a job to do. And this is testing how much you're going to do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That's a really like deep for like a throwaway paragraph.
Yeah. And it's like, it's 3 sentences in the book. And if you don't think about it, it's nothing. But if you sit there and you think about it, which I think they put it in there, so they want you to think about it. You could write books. I mean, people have written thousands and thousands of books just on that.
It's worth going over one more time. So Raceland brewed his foul-smelling herbal drink over the small fire, his strange eyes lingering on Goldmoon's staff. How precious it has become, he commented softly, now that it has been purchased by the blood of innocence. Is it worth it? Is it worth the lives of my people? Goldmoon asked, staring at the nondescript brown staff dully. She seemed to have aged during the night. Gray circles smudged the skin beneath her eyes. None of the companions answered, each looking away in awkward silence. Riverwind stood up abruptly and stalked off into the woods by himself. Goldmoon lifted her eyes and stared after him. Then her head sank into her hand and she began to weep. He blames himself. She shook her head. And I am not helping him. It wasn't his fault. It's deep because Riverwind is stuck. I went to this place of Black Death. I brought this thing out and it has killed my people. And it is entirely on me that all of this is happening.
Normal people would say it's a cursed item and to throw away and go in the opposite direction. It's like a monkey paw, you would think, right? Like, oh, it heals
That's
you.
That's exactly what it is, right? Like, it heals you, but it also, okay, great. It healed the cut on your arm, but killed your mother.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very Dark Sun, not Dragonlance. But the thing is, though, the ultimate, I guess we'll see how this develops, right? We don't want to give away too much.
Yeah.
We're still in the very early part of Autumn Twilight.
So they start walking, and they walk straight into a swamp. And they should have known it was there, because New Sea implies water, and this is fantasy, and every fantasy novel has to have a swamp. It's obligatory.
But at the same time, it's still a cool looking swamp, right?
Like, every swamp is cool. I know why they do things in swamps, because you can do a lot of cool things in swamps, and actually, it's not even like a real swamp. Because quicksand doesn't exist, and like those vines and all that stuff like that, it's like,
look,
real swamps aren't like that at all.
This chapter is definitely an homage to like boys' life adventure stories, and like that's fine. It's fun. It's fun. It's a really, I mean, we just came out of really dark and ominous, and these guys are now like, okay, we gave you some meat to chew on, to think about, and sadness and stuff. Now we're getting into the fun. We don't want to make you too sad. Let's bring it back a step, go into fun times, because this is one of the funnest chapters in the book, in my opinion. Like, not just this chapter, but like this and the next one are just a delight.
They're in the swamp, and Flint immediately sinks into quicksand. They don't call it quicksand. They call it death murk.
Death murk. Yeah, like, let's be real. But it's also, Flint is 4 feet tall on a good day, right? Like, he's like 3'8" or something like that.
He doesn't have to sink far.
No, it's not like, yeah, it might be waist deep for Riverwind, but waist deep for Riverwind is nose deep for Flint, right? Yeah, so Flint is walking in front of Tasselhoff when suddenly the dwarf gives a great shout and disappeared into the muck. They could see only his head. And Flint is flailing And Riverwind and Sturm basically go and grab a branch. Karaman pulls a tree out of the ground because he's Karaman. Um, and then he drags a gigantic tree. Flint is basically drowning in the goop. They drag him out, and it's pretty hilarious. The dwarf is clinging from it, and then a gigantic snake comes and slithers into the ooze right where the dwarf had been floundering. And they're like, so you guys want to turn back? Seems like we can't get through this.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to make it through this swamp alive. And then Riverwind says he knows a way to the city, but he doesn't know how he knows. And then, as we said, the party realizes that Xak Tsorath must be the place where he went mad and found the blue staff originally.
Yeah, so...
And that's when we know, like, oh, coming full circle here for Riverwind.
Yeah, because Riverwind's like, I can't remember when, but I've been here. I know a way through the swamp. And it leads to... He licked his lip. Leads to a broken city of evil, Tanis asked grimly, when the plainsman didn't finish the sentence. Xak Tsorath, Raistlin hissed. Of course, it makes sense, said Tanis off. Where else would we go to find out answers about the staff, except for the place where the staff was given to you?
Yep.
Fancy that. So Riverwind basically sits there and is like, takes the lead, grabs a stick and starts just poking into the ground. Path blazing, trail finding. He's a fighter ranger type. This is his shtick.
And he's already been here.
Yeah, and he's already been here. So he might not know specifically where to go, but he at least knows how to get there.
When they find these mysterious rope vine bridges, they don't know who built them or maintains them, but that should give us some clue that this swamp isn't as uninhabited and mysterious, desolate as we think. Because if you build a bridge in the wilderness and you don't maintain it, it falls apart pretty quick.
Yeah. So, I mean, the bridges look pretty cool. And it's like, why not? Let there be bridges. What could be going on? But as they're going through, there's like snakes and monsters and stuff just staring at them. Riverrun's like, look, it's not very deep, but if you take the wrong step, we're going to sink. So please just follow me exactly. And they do that. They start following. They start going through the muck. And then by midday, they find a dry patch of ground. They take a break. They're sopping wet. They're disgusting. They've been smucking through the swamp all day. And so Flint is like starting to whine about rheumatism and arthritis and being an old man. Tanis is like, yo, Taz, maybe you got something in those pockets over there that can maybe calm the old man down and like get him to stop whining a lot.
Yeah, a little medicinal whiskey, perhaps.
Yeah. And so Taz's like, oh, I'm sure I got something. That's like, aha, brandy, Odic's finest. And so the two of them sit there and, yeah, I love this part. It's like, I don't suppose you paid for it, Tanis asked, grinning. Oh, I will, the Kender said, replied, hurt. Next time I'm there. Sure, said Tanis. And share some with him. Not too much, just warm him up. Of course, 10 seconds later, they're singing like drunken songs and just like getting loud and stupid.
They get trashed.
They get real wasted. It's real funny. They're like, I'll bet Raistlin could turn one of those Draconians to stone by himself just by staring at it. And then Flint's like, I'll bet Karaman would stick a fork and eat it. They just start laughing. Then suddenly Flint nearly plunges headfirst into a pool because they're both completely wasted. But then they sit there and see a gigantic tree trunk that's been laid across, start to cross it because they're like, this is a bridge. None of these stupid like spider crawling webs. And then Taz's like, shouldn't we wait for the others? Tanis wouldn't want us to get separated. And Flint's like, I'll show him. And they start going off. And a voice in the unbrandied part of Flint's mind told him he could have never done this cold sober. It also told him he was a fool for crossing the bridge, but he ignored it. He was feeling positively young again.
Well, and then they start crossing it. And of course, they're not being quiet. And there's a Draconian. And then a lot of things happen real quick. Taz yells out for Tanis, tries to fight it. Flint stumbles into the fight. There are now more of them. Flint, drunk, tries to attack it. He misses, slips off to the log, falls into the water. I mean, this is a bit from like a 30s comedy, right? Like,
oh yeah, it's slapstick as well right here.
Yeah, and then Taz, instead of sticking around, he also jumps into the water. The rest of the party, they hear Taz scream, they run forward, and when they reach the fallen tree bridge, there are now 4 Draconians there. And all of a sudden, they're surrounded by darkness. Raistlin cries magic and says the party cannot fight this battle. And then Raistlin goes quiet. Karaman curses, then also goes quiet. Tanis finds himself covered in an entangling goo. and he hears the other party members struggle, then he and the rest of the party is put to sleep.
Whoops.
The sleep spell happens quite a lot so far in the
Well,
early
look,
chapters of the book.
The early chapters of the book, they're like level 5. Sleep is going to hit them really hard because they've got really poor saving throws. You will find as we go, the sleep spell gets a lot less useful. But it is a low level spell. What would you do if you're in an encounter? Any higher level spell than this would kill the party. So you got to just knock them out. But also remember, these guys want to capture the staff. They want to capture the people. So maybe it's in their interest to not kill the party in the first place.
Is the darkness, is that a spell you recognize? And the goo, is there an entangling goo spell?
Well, yeah, the darkness is basically casting. You got a spell called light. Light casts a 30-foot orb of light around you. The opposite of the light spell is dark. Which casts a 30-foot globe of darkness that you can't see through.
Got it.
Right? And then the head-to-toe gooey substance that has covered them from, that he cannot get out of, that's like enmeshing him further and further, that's the web spell. The web spell, of course, does exactly what you think it does. It shoots out a big glob of spider web, and it just kind of like, you are stuck and can't move.
I have a question. If you are the caster of a darkness spell, can you see through the darkness, or does it affect you too? Or do they just not deal with that? We're just using author's artistic license here to say that they can cast darkness and cast goo on you. And
the thing is, the people casting the darkness here, the Draconians, who are like presumably the Draconians who are the spellcasters here, they have a thing called dark vision.
Oh.
That lets them see through the dark. But also, when you cast a darkness spell, it causes total impenetrable darkness in the area of effect for about like 15-foot radius or something like that. Neither normal nor magical light works there, and even infravision is useless. So no, you cannot see through this. You drop a big globe of dark. However, it's like a small little orb there. So you can cast it on the people in there and then cast the web spell on them, which is going to stop them from moving around, stop them from being able to get anywhere. You end up with this ensnared party. Like, they're using a whole bunch of first level spells to just knock them out.
Yeah, it's pretty effective. So that's where chapter 13 ends. And in our next episode, we'll take up with the companions in chapter 14, Prisoners of the Draconians. My name is Jonathan Howard, and you can find me at False Logic. And where can people find you, Shiva?
You can find me at Electrotal, and we will see you next time when we figure out what exactly is on the other side of this swamp here. It's a good time.
Next time on the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. Thanks, folks.